Hey there. Ready to explore happiness but with a twist?
Hmm.
Today, we're going to be diving deep into the world of Osho.
Oh, wow.
You know, that spiritual teacher and thinker who had some pretty radical ideas about finding joy and just, fulfillment in life.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
We've got a whole stack of his writings and
Yeah.
teachings here that we're going to unpack. So
How fun.
let me tell you, things are about to get really interesting.
Yeah, what's fascinating about Osho, I think, is that he really didn't shy away from challenging what you might call conventional wisdom
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
He was born in India
Yeah.
back in 1931
Mhm.
as Rajneesh Chandra Mohan Jain.
Wow.
And over time, he kind of evolved into this super captivating figure
Yeah.
known as Osho.
Yeah, he wasn't really your typical, spiritual guru or
Yeah,
anything.
right.
He took Eastern mysticism,
Right.
kind of blended it all with Western psychology and created this totally unique philosophy.
Right.
And it really pushed boundaries, especially back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It was a wild time, free love
Yeah.
and questioning authority and really embracing individuality. That was a big one.
For Osho, it wasn't just about, blind faith, right?
No, no.
It wasn't about following some dogma.
Right.
He
Yeah.
he encouraged people to question literally everything.
Everything.
Find their own truth
Right.
and just live authentically.
Yeah.
Even if it meant going against all the societal norms.
Right.
That's actually a really key part of his whole approach to happiness.
Okay, yeah, I'm already intrigued. Before we get too deep into his, philosophy,
Sure.
can you give us a little bit of context about Osho?
Yeah, for sure.
I know he had, a pretty colorful life.
Yes, he did.
With an ashram in India and even a
Mhm.
kind of a controversial commune in Oregon.
Yeah, definitely. Osho's life was anything but ordinary.
Right.
I mean, he attracted thousands of followers from all over the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
They were drawn to his charisma and his, unconventional teachings.
Right.
The ashram in Pune became like this hub,
Yeah.
for spiritual seekers from everywhere.
Right.
And then later, the commune in Oregon, well, that's kind of where things got,
Yeah.
I don't know, a little bit,
Yeah.
a little more complicated.
Yeah. Let's just say there were a few
A few.
legal issues
Yeah.
and some conflicts with the local community.
Right.
But, that's a whole other
Yeah, that's for another time.
deep dive.
Yeah.
For now, though,
Right.
let's focus on the heart of Osho's teachings.
Yeah.
His perspective on happiness.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just about smiling all the time, is it?
Definitely not. I mean, for Osho, happiness wasn't really a fleeting emotion
Yeah.
or something that you just, chase after.
Right.
It's like an inner state of being.
Yeah.
He truly believed that it's like our natural state.
Hmm.
But we often kind of cover it up with all these layers of, conditioning
Yeah.
and fear and societal expectations, all that.
So it's kind of like we're born happy,
Mhm.
but then life sort of gets in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We start to believe that happiness comes from, all those external things,
Yes.
achievements and possessions and relationships
Right.
and the whole deal. And we end up chasing after these things, hoping they'll fill some void.
Right.
But Osho argued that true happiness, like lasting happiness,
Yeah.
can only be found within.
Okay, that makes sense, but it also sounds a bit, abstract.
Okay. Okay.
How do we actually access this inner happiness? Did Osho offer any practical methods or tools?
He did. And they might actually surprise you. One of his most famous techniques
Yeah.
is called dynamic meditation.
I've heard of that.
You have?
Yeah. Isn't it a bit more,
Yes.
dynamic than traditional meditation?
You could definitely say that Osho believed that
Yeah.
modern life,
Yeah.
with all its stresses and pent-up energy,
Right.
requires a much more active approach to meditation.
Right.
So he created dynamic meditation,
Right.
which involves these 5 distinct stages, each one
Wow.
designed to really shake things up and release, all those blockages that prevent us from
Yeah.
experiencing inner peace and joy.
This sounds fascinating. Can you walk us through
Yeah.
kind of the different stages?
Absolutely.
Because I think, our listeners probably wondering
Yeah.
what shouting who has to do with meditation.
So the first stage is all about chaotic breathing.
Okay.
It's about energizing the body waking up the whole system.
Intense breathing, got it. What happens next?
Then comes catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
It's about like expressing whatever emotions, just arise,
Yeah.
anger, sadness, frustration,
Right.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
through movement and sound.
Right.
So this could involve, jumping, shaking,
Yeah.
even shouting.
Okay, so definitely not your typical silent
Yeah.
meditation
We're
routine.
getting close.
Right.
And that's just the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Stage 3 is actually where that famous
Oh, the
zhu
sleep.
comes in.
Gotcha.
It's about like releasing even more energy through, vocalization.
Right.
It can get, it can get pretty loud.
Wow. Yeah, I'm starting to see why it's called dynamic meditation.
Yeah, okay.
What about the last two stages?
Okay. Yeah.
Do things like calm down a bit.
Stage 4 is all about stillness.
Mhm.
So after all that, activity and everything,
Right.
you just suddenly stop. You freeze in place
Wow.
and you just observe whatever's happening within you.
So it's like the calm after the storm.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, in stage 5,
Yeah.
there's celebration.
Celebration.
It's about, expressing your newfound energy and freedom through dance and movement.
Okay, so we go from like, chaotic breathing to shouting to stillness to like celebration.
Yes.
It's like an emotional roller coaster for the soul almost.
Absolutely.
But I can see how it could be incredibly liberating,
That's the whole point. Osho believed that by shaping up our our usual patterns and releasing those pent-up emotions, we kind of create this space for inner peace and happiness to emerge.
Okay, so dynamic meditation's definitely like one tool.
One tool, yeah.
In Osho's happiness toolkit.
For sure.
But I'm guessing there's more to his philosophy than just, syncing things up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He had some pretty radical ideas about freedom and authenticity and just living in the present moment, all of which he believed were essential for cultivating true happiness.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Great.
I think we need to take a pause here.
Okay.
And let our listener absorb all this this fascinating information.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We'll be back in just a moment to unpack more of Osho's teachings. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. All right. We're back, ready to continue our deep dive into Osho's unique perspective on happiness.
Yeah.
We've already, kind of explored dynamic meditation.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to his teachings, right?
Absolutely. I mean, his whole approach to happiness went way beyond any single technique or anything.
Right.
It was this whole philosophy centered on freedom, self-acceptance, and living authentically.
Okay, those are some pretty big, concepts.
Yeah, they are.
Let's start with freedom.
Okay.
What did Osho actually mean by that?
Yeah. And how did he see it as, essential for happiness?
Well, he believed that true freedom, like real freedom, comes from within.
Okay.
It's not about like your external circumstances or even having like a ton of choices or anything like that. It's about liberating yourself from the chains of your own mind.
What kind of chains are we talking about here?
Think about all the things that we tend to cling to.
Yeah, right.
Possessions, relationships, ideas, beliefs, even our own identities.
Right.
Osho argued that this clinging, that's what creates suffering.
Okay.
Because it makes your happiness completely dependent on external factors that we can't always control. Right?
Yeah, it's like we become attached to these things.
Right, exactly.
And then we're like, afraid of losing them.
Yeah.
Which ultimately keeps us from, experiencing true freedom and happiness, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
He saw this clinging as a form of like imprisonment almost.
Wow.
And he encouraged people to practice non-attachment as a way to break free.
Non-attachment. I'm sensing a connection to that, to that delicious meal analogy we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So it's all about like savoring the experience, right? Okay. Enjoying the meal without feeling the need to possess it or control it.
Okay.
And in the context of life, it means, like engaging with the world, with relationships, with all of our experiences, basically.
Yeah.
Without getting fixated on outcomes or clinging to how things should be.
So it's not about like, avoiding relationships or giving up, everything you own, but about, changing your mindset.
Exactly. It's about realizing that true happiness doesn't come from holding on tightly, but from letting go.
Okay.
And this can be a really powerful way to navigate all the anxieties and uncertainties of modern life.
I can see how that applies to things like fear of missing out or FOMO as they call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like so prevalent in the digital age.
Oh, for sure.
We're constantly bombarded with, images, messages that make us feel like we need to be doing more, having more, experiencing more.
More. That's it.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, it really is.
And
Osho's teachings kind of offer like a different perspective.
Okay.
He'd say that, this constant striving and comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for unhappiness.
Right.
True fulfillment comes from connecting with our inner selves, not from, chasing external validation.
Okay, so freedom is about releasing those attachments and finding, contentment within.
Yeah.
What about authenticity?
Okay.
How does that tie into Osho's vision of happiness?
Authenticity for Osho meant, living in alignment with your true self.
Okay.
Even if that means, deviating from societal expectations or norms.
Right.
He believed that a lot of us, we wear masks, try to fit in and please others.
Yeah.
But this ultimately leads to a sense of disconnection and unhappiness.
So it's about having the courage to be yourself.
Yeah.
Even if it means, kind of standing out from the crowd.
Exactly. It's about embracing all parts of yourself, including, the so-called flaws or imperfections.
Right.
Osho believed that, these imperfections are what make us, unique and interesting. Trying to suppress them or mold yourself into, some ideal image only creates inner conflict and unhappiness.
That's a really powerful message, especially in a world where, we're constantly bombarded with images of perfection and told to strive for some unattainable ideal.
Yeah, so Osho's teachings offer an antidote to that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
He encouraged people to celebrate their individuality, to find joy in being different.
Right.
And to express themselves freely without fear of judgment.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so freedom, authenticity. Is there anything else in Osho's, kind of recipe for happiness that we should explore?
There's one more essential ingredient.
Okay.
And it's something that a lot of us struggle with, I think.
Yeah.
Living in the present moment.
Yes, the classic, mindfulness concept. Yeah. But how did Osho approach this idea?
Well, he believed that true happiness, it can only be experienced in the here and now, right?
Right.
He saw the past is gone, obviously,
right,
and the future is uncertain.
Yeah.
Emphasizing that the only reality we really have is this present moment.
So it's about letting go of regrets about the past and worries about the future and simply, being present in the now.
Exactly. It's about savoring each experience, appreciating the beauty in, those everyday moments, and cultivating a sense of gratitude for what we have.
Okay.
He often talked about how we miss out on so much of life because we're either dwelling in the past or worrying about the future.
This resonates with me so much. I know I'm guilty of spending way too much time just lost in thought, either, replaying past events or worrying about things that, that haven't even happened yet. Right. It's like I'm missing out on the actual experience of living.
Yeah. That's something we all struggle with to some extent, for sure.
Right.
But Osho reminds us that the key to happiness, it isn't found in some distant future or in rehashing the past.
Right.
It's right here, right now.
Yeah.
In every breath, in every sensation, in every interaction.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Okay, so we've got freedom.
Yeah.
authenticity, and living in the present moment as kind of like these key pillars, of Osho's happiness philosophy.
For sure.
It's a lot to digest, but I'm starting to see how these concepts all kind of fit together to create a more, fulfilling and joyful way of being.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach, really. And it definitely requires a shift in perspective, but the potential rewards they're immense.
Before we move on, I'm curious about your personal experience with these ideas. Yeah. Have you found them helpful in your own life?
Oh, absolutely. I've been studying Osho's teachings for many years now.
Wow.
And they've honestly had a profound impact on how I view the world and how I navigate, the ups and downs of life.
That's great to hear. I think it's always helpful to hear from people who are actually putting these principles into practice.
I agree. Yeah. It's not always easy, I have to admit.
Right.
But I find that the more I embrace Osho's teachings, the more I experience a sense of inner peace and joy, even amidst the challenges that inevitably arise.
Okay, well, I'm feeling inspired to explore these ideas further, but I think it's time to move on to like the practical side of things. Right. How can our listeners actually integrate Osho's teachings into their daily lives?
That's a great question.
We'll find out after a quick break. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into, Osho's world.
Okay.
We've explored his ideas about freedom, authenticity, and living in the present moment. But now let's get down to like the brass tacks. Right. How can we actually apply these concepts to our like everyday lives?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to like understand these ideas, intellectually.
Right.
But it's quite another to actually live them.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the theory and forget about like the practical application.
Yeah, for sure.
So where do we even like begin?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Osho wasn't really about like rigid rules or dogmas,
Okay.
He offered a toolbox of, techniques and perspectives and encouraged people to just, experiment and find what worked best for them.
So it's about, kind of finding our own unique path to happiness inspired by his teachings.
Precisely. There's no like one size fits all approach.
Right.
What resonates with one person might not resonate with another at all.
Okay, that's reassuring. It takes the pressure off feeling like we have to like do everything perfectly Osho style.
Right.
But can you give us some specific examples of how we might integrate his teachings into like our daily routines?
Absolutely. Let's start with something simple but powerful. Cultivating awareness.
Yeah.
Osho really emphasized the importance of being present in the moment.
Right.
Observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Sounds a lot like, mindfulness, which is so popular these days.
Yeah. It is. And you can practice mindfulness, throughout your day.
Okay.
Whether you're washing dishes, walking to work, or just having a conversation.
Right.
It's about bringing your full attention to the present experience without getting lost in mental chatter or distractions,
So instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media or waiting in line, we could, take a few deep breaths and notice, the sensations in our bodies, the sounds around us.
Yeah.
Just the details of our surroundings.
Exactly. It's about shifting from autopilot to conscious awareness.
Okay.
Savoring those simple moments that often go unnoticed.
I love that. It's like a mini meditation practice that we can incorporate throughout our day.
And speaking of meditation, if you're looking for a more structured practice, dynamic meditation is a great option. We talked about the 5 stages earlier,
right?
And while it might sound intense,
right,
it can be incredibly liberating.
I have to admit, the shouting and the chaotic breathing still feel a bit, out of my comfort zone.
I totally understand that. But remember, you don't have to go all in right from the start.
Okay.
You can experiment with the different stages.
Right.
Find what resonates with you and then gradually incorporate them into your practice.
Okay, good point. Baby steps, yeah.
Yeah.
What about What about self-acceptance?
Yeah.
We talked about how Osho, encouraged embracing like all parts of ourselves, even the messy bits. But, that can be really hard in a world that constantly tells us to strive for perfection.
It is a challenge, but it's a worthy pursuit.
Okay.
Start by becoming aware of those critical inner voices.
Right.
Those negative thoughts that tell you, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, or whatever enough.
Yeah, it's like catching yourself in the act of like self-sabotage almost.
Exactly. And then instead of judging yourself for those thoughts, try offering yourself some compassion.
Okay.
Talk to yourself the way you would talk to like a good friend.
Right.
Who's, feeling down on themselves.
So it's about, replacing that harsh inner critic with a more like supportive and understanding voice.
Precisely. And remember, self-acceptance isn't about complacency. It's about creating a foundation of love and acceptance from which you can then, grow and evolve.
I love that reframing. It's not about like settling for mediocrity, but about, acknowledging our imperfections as part of what makes us human.
Exactly. And when we accept ourselves fully, we free up so much energy that we can then channel into creativity and growth and positive change.
This is all making like so much sense. Awareness, meditation, self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Are there any other like practical tools from Osho's teachings?
There is one that's particularly relevant in our fast-paced, hyper-connected world. Practicing non-attachment.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The art of letting go.
Right.
But how do we do that in a world that constantly encourages us to like cling to things?
It's a good question.
Possessions, relationships, even our like online identities.
It's not about like renouncing the world or becoming, detached from people or anything. It's about shifting our perspective.
Right.
It's about recognizing that true happiness, it doesn't come from, clinging to outcomes or trying to like control everything.
Can you give us like a real world
example of what that might look like?
Okay, let's say you're working on a project that's really important to you, right? It's natural to want it to succeed, to put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
But clinging too tightly to like a specific outcome that can create like so much anxiety and stress.
Yeah, because if things don't go exactly as planned, we feel like, like a failure.
Yeah, exactly. So non-attachment in this context would mean, like giving your best effort, but also being open to the possibility that things might not, unfold exactly as you envisioned.
So it's about accepting that we can't control everything and trusting that even if things don't go our way, there's still like something to be learned from the experience. Exactly. It's about, like surrendering to the flow of life, knowing that we can't always like predict or control the outcome.
Right.
But we can choose, how we respond to whatever challenges or surprises, come our way.
This is such a powerful like concept.
Yeah.
And I think it applies to so many areas of life,
It does.
From our careers to our relationships to our own like personal growth.
For sure. And the more we practice non-attachment, the more we free ourselves from the fear of failure.
Right.
And the need to like control everything,
Yeah.
And this in turn creates more space for joy and creativity and spontaneity.
I love how Osho always emphasized that element of playfulness.
Yeah, me too.
It's like he's reminding us not to take ourselves too seriously.
Totally.
To find the joy in the journey, right?
Absolutely. He believed that, laughter and playfulness are essential for well-being.
Okay.
He'd often say that life is a cosmic dance.
Right.
And we should embrace it with a sense of wonder and delight.
That's such a beautiful image. Okay, so I think we've covered like a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Well, yeah.
We've explored Osho's, unique perspective on happiness, from his dynamic meditation techniques to, his philosophies of freedom, authenticity, and living in the present moment.
That's a lot.
Is there a final takeaway, sort of parting thought you'd like to leave our listener with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Osho's teachings aren't about like becoming someone else or following a set of rules or anything like that.
Right.
They're about discovering who you already are and living a life that's true to your authentic self.
It's about finding your own version of happiness on your own terms.
Exactly. And that journey of self-discovery, it's an ongoing process full of twists and turns and moments of joy and moments of, challenge.
Right.
But if you embrace it with an open heart and a playful spirit, who knows what you might discover.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of Osho. We hope you've, gained some valuable insights and are inspired to explore your own, path to happiness. Until next time, keep diving deep and remember to embrace the joy in the journey.